fine like that?
Oh no.
Okay, remember to look at the camera.
Why does it matter? I've got sunglasses on.
Okay. Right. Welcome. No, I don't normally say that anyway. Okay, start again.
Okay, start again. Do you not like me filming with people?
I've never done it.
Oh no.
So I'm going to be planting some acorns, and I'm joined by my lovely daughter. This is Amber. Thank you. So we're going to be planting some acorns. Now, these are quite special acorns because these are from a biodynamic farm, and we went for a walk and we picked lots of acorns, and they're beautiful fat acorns. So we're going to plant some. I'm going to plant some in pots and peat-free compost, and I'm going to plant some others in, basically it's a dish full of marbles, and put some water in the bottom so it just comes up to the base of the marbles, and then you put your acorns in the top, and they then sort of, their roots grow down, but they don't sort of get all soggy and mouldy. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so I've got my so we'll do those in a bit. So we've got the plant pots here. They're just old plant pots, and as I said, I'm using peat-free compost. And what we're going to do is just go through these. Some of these are a bit manky, some of them are rather lovely and perfect, so we're just going to go through and sort through and find the nice ones and plant them. And the way you plant acorns is on their sides, so we'll show you that in a minute. Get some compost. Do you want to get the compost? Hold these.
Thanks, Mum. There's a wasp.
Oh, there's loads of wasps. There's a whole nest up there. So then we put 2 in each thing, on each
Sideways?
side. Yeah, on its side.
That way?
Yeah,
Like that?
yeah,
And like that?
yeah. Do it on that one as well.
Do I need to squish them down?
Just like that is fine. So yeah, if they're brown and squishy, you need to chuck them out, or if they're green and squishy. So that one, these ones here are quite sort of wrinkly and squishy, so we'll get rid of those. Oh,
You're wrinkly.
I'm not wrinkly and squishy.
No.
Oh dear. I've put them now in my little rabbit hutch to keep them safe from, well, I won't really keep them safe from mice, but it'll keep them safe from the chickens, and they'll be nice and safe in there, and hopefully should germinate.
So did the marbles like hold it up?
Yeah, so the marbles stop the acorns from drowning. So they're just sitting there like that. So they get moisture on them, which should encourage the shoots down. But they don't end up, they're not going to drown in the water. Right, we've come down to the field because I'm just going to broadcast the rest of these acorns into the field margins. So you might sort of think, well, that's not a very good place to grow trees, but the fact is they'll go in among the brambles, and although not many of them, or a few of them, only a few of them will germinate, the fact is they will still grow up and they'll be about 10 years old before they come above the height of the brambles. So if they're in amongst the brambles, it stops the deer chewing them and that kind of thing. So we will just go and lob the remainder of these acorns into the scrub.
Put all the heads in here.
Well, just chuck them all in there.
Yeah. Oh, I scared the bird. Sorry. Am I doing a good job?
Yeah.
Good. I thought something was moving. Oh, I wanted to cut the whole bag.
Wasn't one of your better throws.
It was called a machine shop. That was a good one.
Little future oak forest in there.
They're all called amber.
I'm going to make some biscotti, and I'm using Nigella's recipe. This is Feast, and as you can see, it's well loved, falling apart, and as you can tell, I've made this recipe. Oh, it's gone a bit glary once or twice. That's another of my favourite recipes. It's got sort of like a bit like a sort of scratch and sniff element to it, but these are really nice, these biscotti, and because they're sort of a bit more than a biscuit but not as much as a cake, which I quite like. So and I have got the holy trinity of almond essence, almonds, although a bit crinkly, and chocolate buttons. So I don't always have those three things kind of in stock. So I thought I'd make some because I really like them too. So basically, it's a really simple recipe. It's a slight faff at the end because you make a kind of you make a biscuit all in one, and then you bake it, and then before it's like fully hard, you slice it and then sort of toast the biscuits again to get them nice and hard. So they're really, really good for dunking in coffee. So I'm just going to get on. It's just an egg. I whisk in my KitchenAid, but you can use a handheld whisker. Whisker? Whisk. No, whisker. So I'm just going to pop the egg in there. It's just about enough to kind of get the KitchenAid to sort of there's not really very much mixture in there. So I think nowadays you can get little kind of half bowls for doing little bits of KitchenAid whisking, but anyway, so there is vanilla essence or extract in here, and I've actually got a vanilla pod in with my sugar, so it is going to be quite a vanilla-y almond biscotti, but nothing wrong with that in my book. So I'll just get on and weigh out the ingredients. I'm then going to whisk the egg and the sugar until it's really sort of thick and moussey, because that's what gives it the sort of slightly airy texture. You've got to whisk it until you get a sort of trail of ribbons when you lift the whisk out, and this isn't quite ready yet. turn that racket off. So it's really, you can see it's really sort of thick and whipped up now. So I'm just going to now fold in the flour, and then I'll just weigh out the chocolate and almonds and fold them in as well. So I've added my, how much did I put in? Half teaspoon of baking powder and a pinch of salt. So I'm just going to shake that in. I'm going to put in, we need 75 grams of dark chocolate chips, although I quite like these dark chocolate buttons. They're organic and really yummy. So I'll fold those in a minute. These almonds, they're organic and they're from a agroforestry scheme. So basically it's where a farmer grows trees in amongst his crops. So it provides shelter, it provides moisture retention, and it's shade for the crops as well, and also, you know, really increases the biodiversity. So this is from a company called Food and Forest, and they sell through Borough Market, but they're kind of based, they sell nuts from different agroforestry schemes both within the UK and also Europe. So yeah, it's just, I really like sort of using my food ingredients to sort of support the types of agriculture I feel should be pursued. So it's really good to have found these people and be able to use their organic almonds in my baking. And they're not actually, they're not any more expensive. In fact, some of these are slightly less expensive than sort of some of the other organic things you can get. And yeah, it's all compostable packaging and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm really pleased I found these. So I'm going to put in 50 grams, so 75 grams of the chocolate buttons and 50 grams of the shelled almonds. The nuts and chocolate into the batter, and I'm now just gonna, I've greased this piece of baking paper, baking parchment, and I'm just gonna, you've got to sort of form it into a sort of a sausage or a log, which is about 5 centimetres wide and 25 centimetres long, and just sort of fashion it so it's sort of slightly kind of tapering at the end, slightly cigar shaped. So, and then you bake it for 25 minutes. There we go. Here's a biscotti. I've just taken it out of the oven, and I've just got to leave it for about 5 minutes just to kind of harden up a bit, and I'm going to slice it into kind of centimetre thick fingers, so that, and then put them back in the oven to bake for a little bit more, just to harden them up So I'm just going to pop these back in the oven for probably about 10 minutes on a slightly lower heat, just to crisp them up. I'm in my apiary at the moment. I've just come to take the last bit of honey off one of my hives. I don't normally take it so late in the season because the bees need to kind of gather up their stores, and at this time of year they're really thinking about winter, and so I don't really like to disturb them. But the weather's been a bit rubbish, and this hive has got just a bit of honey in the very top box, and I don't like to leave them with too much space, otherwise they have to keep it warm. So I'm just going to take these few frames out of this hive and take off the honey and give them back the mush once I've extracted the honey. So they've got plenty to get them through winter, but it's just this last box I need to take off, so I thought I'd come and show you. Here are my bees, and I've put a special board under here, which basically means the bees will hopefully have vacated the box. Which they pretty much have. I'll just show you. Here we are. There's a few left, but hardly any. So here you can see the valves that I've put on this board, and basically that means the bees can go down but they can't kind of come back up again, which means that they have all come out of this box and have gone down into the hive there, because that's where the queen and the babies are and they want to look after them. So I leave that on overnight, leave the valves, and then they just go down, and this leaves this box pretty much free of bees. So there we are, I've just taken the valves off. Here are the bees, and they've got lots of honey down in there. So I'm going to tuck them up and leave them for the winter. The bees coat the inside of their hive with this sticky resin stuff called propolis, and you can see that whole section inside has been sealed up with their special glue. And it's really important because it's kind of like another bit of their immune system. So just like we have friendly bacteria on our skin and in our nose and mouth to help ward off pathogens, so do bees. And this propolis is kind of like their first defence. So it's really important that they put all this sticky goo, it's quite soft, it's a bit like kind of toffee, inside their hive. Cheers then, girls. See you in the spring. Whenever I bring a super back, there's always a few bees. There's not actually that many, there's probably about 10 in there, but they make a bit of a noise. So I just need to leave the super, this is obviously on its side, that's the underneath, and I just leave it next to an open window. So the bees look for the light and hopefully come out. You can see some of them have honey in them. Oh, there's one. There you go, miss. And these ones up the end here are empty, so they haven't filled the cells in those. And this one here at the end as well. So it's probably only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a bit which have got honey in them. So if this was completely full, everything was full, that would be about 10 or 12 kilos of honey in there. So to be honest, I'm not sorry it's not full because they're really heavy to carry. So what I'll do is the ones which are only half full, so maybe like that one, I'll pop those into a hive which is perhaps a little bit small and could do with some extra food. And then once I've taken the honey out of these, out of the wax, I will feed the remainder back to the bees so that they have still got plenty to clean up, and then I can make the wax into wraps. But yeah, that's what the honey box looks like. I've got the box of honey here, and I've got my bucket which I'm going to strain the honey through. So this has got a kind of mesh top in it and a tap on the bottom. So basically I cut the honey out of the combs and pop it into there. So let me see, so it's all stuck together with propolis. It smells amazing. So I'm just going to lift these out. Some of these, like I said, don't have any honey in them. So here's one, there we go. See, that's built by the bees. What I do is I leave them kind of a strip of wax in the top of the frame. It's all sticky with propolis. And then they build down from that. So if you can see there, fabulous, isn't it? Sausage, get off. Right. So there's a tiny bit of honey in there. You can see the cappings on top of it. A bit more in this one. So some of these, like this one, I'll keep back and give to one of my smaller hives so they've got a bit of extra grub for the winter. Lovely. So when I take the honey out the combs, it's all quite straightforward. I can't, although this one is only sort of half full, I can't give it back to any of the other bees because it's, I don't know if you can see there, it's all a bit sort of wonky. So if I put that in, they'll make all the other frames wonky. So I'm going to cut this one out and clean up the frame. There we go. And this one's the same. So it hasn't got much honey in it, but it's a bit, it's all quite wonky. So this one will have to come out as well. I'll cut the, there's quite a big section which doesn't have any, I'll cut the wax out which isn't being used. There's no point in putting it in here. You can see this is a bit darker, that bit there, that's where it had brood in it, so that's where the nest originally was in the hive, but that's all the young bees have hatched out now, so they backfill it with honey. So you can see, so when the bees are making the honey, they take the nectar and they evaporate off the moisture. You can see here the cells are angled, so when they fill them with nectar, obviously the honey doesn't all sort of fall out. And then once it's reached the correct moisture content, they put a wax cap over it. It's just a question of cutting through the combs and letting the honey drain through the sieve. So the bees need probably about 10 of these frames, 10, 12 of these frames to feed on over the winter. Obviously bees make honey, so they've got something to eat during the winter when it's too cold and the weather's not right for them to forage, but also obviously in temperate climates like we have here in the UK, there's nothing for them to eat between sort of November and February. So they will feed on ivy flowers. So if you've got any ivy in your garden, please let it flower, because it's fabulous for honeybees and all sorts of pollinators. And then the next thing that will flower after that is willow. You can get, they do feed on crocuses as well. So if you like bulbs in your garden, please grow some crocuses, because they're the really early flowering ones are fantastic for honeybees, but also bumblebees who are out and about at that time as well. So this is just raw honey. So it goes through the sieve and I then put it in jars. It doesn't get heat treated. The only filter it has is literally this sieve here. It's got all the pollen in it. There's, it doesn't get pasteurized or anything like that, and that is raw honey. So the kind of stuff you buy, in squeezy bottles in the supermarket, yeah, it was probably honey once, but it will have been microfiltered, heat treated. It'll be blended from all sorts of different countries. And it's really kind of quite important that if you're going to buy honey, to make sure you are actually buying honey. I was reading an article in the paper about the fact that raw honey is really good for coughs and colds and as an antibacterial, antiviral. It's fabulous if you mix it with sort of ginger, or you steep herbs like rosemary and garlic and ginger in with a pot of honey, because that makes a really sort of medicinal syrup. And so, but I was reading about how honey is very good for coughs and colds, but you have to get your honey right, because like I said, the sort of sugary stuff you buy for inexpensively in the supermarket isn't really going to have any of the medicinal properties that this stuff will. This is literally, it's out of the hive, it's put through a sieve and it's put in a jar, and that is the difference between honey and raw honey. I don't feed my bees sugar. I always leave them with enough to overwinter so they don't get fed sugar syrup. I don't use any chemical mite treatments in the hive. So again, even within raw honey, there's kind of ways of doing it. But yeah, it's delicious and nutritious, and it's a brilliant way of boosting your immune system, because here you can see how the rims of these cells, it's quite heavy. The rims of these cells are all sort of fortified with propolis, so the sticky glue, they make their cells more rigid and structurally sound by putting propolis all around them. So this whole thing has been built by the bees, the wax. The wax cells, the whole thing is built by the workers, which are the females, who do the majority of the work in the hive, as their name suggests. And they look after the queen, who is their mum, and her role is to lay eggs and also release a hormone, or a pheromone, which is a bit like a hormone, which keeps the colony working together as one unit. You can see this one's got quite a lot of dark in it. That's where it's got pollen in it, and also where it previously had brood. You can see, fabulous stuff. It's very sticky. So once all the honey's drained out, I will give the cut combs back to the bees. So I'll put it in the top of the hive and they lick it all clean and take it down into the frames they've still got in the hive. So although a lot of honey will come off this, there's a lot that will still be stuck to the wax. So probably about a quarter of it will get fed back to them. So there we go. So I just leave that to drain for probably 24, 36 hours. And then I'll be able to put it in jars. That concludes this week's vlog. Hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you next week.